Hey curlers, welcome back to the Chess on Ice Basic Strategy course. This has been a course where we've been teaching the sort of basic fundamentals of curling strategy. That started off in lesson 1 with teaching you what the purpose is of each particular type of shot. In lesson 2, we talked about the differences in strategy when you're ahead or behind. And in lesson 3, we talked about how strategy varies when you have the hammer or you don't. For lesson 4, we're going to talk about how you can take advantage of common mistakes your opponents might make during games. Now, these could be for a couple different reasons. They could be execution mistakes. Just didn't throw the rock where they wanted it to go. They could also be strategic mistakes, where they're throwing a rock where maybe they really shouldn't, or at least where it isn't the best place to put it. Really taking advantage of errors is the way we get an advantage in a curling match most often. It's great to make great shots, but if both teams make great shots all the time, it's going to be a pretty even battle. If you want to take advantage, if you want to get the edge in a game, chances are you're going to have your opponents make some mistakes, and then you're going to have to take advantage of them. That's especially true in club play, where the mistakes tend to be bigger, but it's also true at the very highest levels. Even if the mistakes are small, it's by taking advantage of those errors that you can build up an advantage. So I'm not going to differentiate between strategic and execution errors in this video. There are some ways in which you might alter your approach depending on the type of mistakes your opponents make, but in this case, to keep things simple, we're just going to talk about what mistakes you might see that are very common and how you might take advantage of them. There is no way I could cover every possible error an opponent can make or you could make in a game. But the idea here will give you some general ideas that will apply to a much broader set of situations that you might run into during play. To get started, let's talk about when you're playing with the hammer and you're looking to score. That's, of course, when you're behind with the hammer, but we could also be talking about close games early in the game. Anytime where you are thinking about, if I have a chance to play offensively, I'd like to. And I'm not just thinking about eliminating rocks and, holding a lead and getting to the end of the game. So to start off, let's look at the most simple situation we can find ourselves on the curling ice. There's going to be nothing in play. We're assuming that the non-hammer team maybe hogged a rock, threw a rock through, or maybe they hit and rolled out when we first threw one in. They threw one in, we hit, and they tried to hit back. Either way, we're still on lead rocks. There is nothing in the house. If we're trying to score in this situation, we have any interest in scoring at all, the rock we should throw here is a corner guard. Why are we throwing this corner guard? Well, we have absolutely no risk of giving up a steal here unless things go really, really wrong, right? So we're not really in danger, and when you're not in danger, that's when you can push for more points and play more aggressively. Aggression only comes with risk if there's something that makes the situation risky. In this case, there isn't. So we want to set up that corner guard, look to come around it, as we've talked about in other videos, get one or more rocks behind that corner guard, and that'll set us up for a multiple point end. Here's another really common error you'll see, where the non-hammer team throws a rock behind the tee line, but still on the center line for now. We'll talk about other bigger errors later. In this case, where exactly that rock ends up is going to have a big influence on how you want to try to take advantage of this error. If the rock is just behind the tee line, not a huge mistake by the non-hammer team, because it is still shrinking the scoring area, right? If this rock remains here and never gets removed, say we try that same strategy of throwing a corner guard, the non-hammer team may come to the top 4. They may even throw a tight guard. In any case, they're going to try to take control of that 4-foot circle on the center line. We also don't want to come right down to that rock because then we're playing right into their hands. We're actually shrinking the scoring area. They can follow us down. And now we're in a situation where we are fighting over inches of real estate maybe around the pin, and we really have very little chance of scoring, and a steal is very much in play. Now, if we're losing, we will throw the corner guard, of course, because even if they threw a top 4 rock, we'd throw the corner guard. But let's say it's a close game or we're winning. This rock does present some danger, So the best thing you can probably do with it is hit it, roll away, leave something in the corner of the ice, out of play, out of danger, something that the opposing team can't use against us, and move on from there. But what if the rock is way back here on the 12-foot? Well, in that case, that rock is almost irrelevant to us, and here's why. Yes, it's on the center line, that's great, but because it's so far back in the house, and it is barely in the full 12-foot, it is extremely unlikely that the non-hammer team is going to be able to use that to steal or even threaten to steal against us. With the hammer, with the last rock, we really should have a rock better than that, even if the end doesn't go very well. It's also behind the T-line, so it can't be used as a guard, to promote, to tap, anything like that. This rock will almost never come into play except as something we might potentially jam on. Either team might, of course, later in the end. So if that rock's so irrelevant, what should we do? Well, remember, what did we do when there was nothing on the sheet? We should consider this almost as though there is still nothing on the sheet, and we will throw up our corner guard. And again, play our game plan because we know there's no risk. Play our game plan to get under that guard and set up an end for multiple points. If we are in a situation, this would be the only exception, we're in a situation where we have a big lead, especially late in the game, then you might hit this rock just to keep things simple. But don't get baited into hitting this if you have any interest in scoring. If you have an interest in scoring, you can safely ignore that rock, set up your corner guard, and act like it doesn't even exist, that rock in the back 12. Now here's a bigger mistake you might see from time to time, where a guard under or over curls for the non-hammered team, and instead of getting a center line guard, they've gotten something that's a corner guard. Even something out on the 4-foot lines, those TV lines, like the green lines as we see on the screen here, you could probably consider that effectively a corner guard for our purposes. What do we want to do when the non-hammered team does this? Again, it's going to depend a little bit on the situation and where exactly that rock is. Here, I've put up a relatively high guard, right? A solid 2 guard, with plenty of room for us to come around. If we don't feel the need to be super aggressive, we can just use their guard against them, come in right away, be playing a fairly safe end, coming around their rock, looking to score, right? This is a lot like the situation where we come around our own corner guard. It's unlikely they're going to go for this run in most club level play. If they do, it won't put us in serious danger even if they make it, because there's still nothing in the 4-foot at all and no guards near the center line. And overall, it's a good situation for us to build a big end of at least 2 or more. Would we rather it be our guard? Sure, but this is a very safe way of setting up a deuce when they put up a corner guard. If we need to play very aggressively, we can instead throw up a second guard. If we're down a few points, I would much rather throw this. This is also a great situation with the hammer. It's just a little bit more aggressive. You've now set up 2 places to hide, which is awesome. If that's what you need, then you're kind of set with that. They might peel their own guard now if they're smart and it's late in the game and they have a lead, but we still now have another guard we can use. The reason I don't love this, unless we need 2 guards or we really want 2 guards and we need to play very aggressively, it does make it sometimes harder to draw to the center line at the end of the end to get your extra point or to score if you're only going to get 1. We do have guards on both sides of the house. Both sides of the sheet in front of the house in the guard zone could get cluttered this way. Might make your draws a little tougher, but it's still a very good shot. You're still taking advantage of the fact that the non-hammer team has a shot they absolutely don't want there. And yeah, you're set up with 2 corner guards. Can't go wrong with that. Here's one of the more interesting errors that the non-hammer team can make. And this comes when they not only, maybe they tried to draw in the house, maybe they tried to throw a guard. They don't get it on the center line, but they also get it behind the T line. So really not where, the team throwing first wants to put a rock, of course. And I think most people know this isn't a very good rock, right? And unless you have a big lead, just like that rock, on the back 12 we talked about before, you're probably not going to hit this. Again, you have a big lead, or late in the game you're defending a lead, sure, hit it. Just make the game simpler, of course. But if you're in a situation where you're looking to score, what do we think we should do here to increase our chances of a big end? Well, before we talked about how when the other team throws an irrelevant rock here, we're going to throw a corner guard. And that's true here too. But you might be surprised where I tell you to throw that corner guard. I am going to suggest throwing the corner guard in front of this yellow rock. Why would we do that? Why would we purposely guard the other team's rock? Well, the truth is, we're really not guarding a rock, at least not a relevant one. When someone throws a bad rock like this, and I mean bad in the sense of a rock that's not likely to count, you really shouldn't think about guarding that rock, even if it's your own. That's a mistake we see new skips make all the time. Maybe there's a rock way in the back of the house, and the team wants to count, so they guard it when they'd be better off trying to set up an end some other way when they still have plenty of time to score, right? Because that rock in the back of the house is almost never worth guarding, and it's not worth guarding for a second reason, which is the whole reason we're throwing this guard right now, which is that if you have a rock in the back of the house and there's a guard well out in front of it, you can draw around that guard and sit both behind the guard and in front of the rock in the back of the house. And that is our game plan here. We threw up this guard that we might draw down here at some point. And not only is our rock protected by our guard, but it has protection behind it in the form of that yellow rock. Meaning any play down to our red rock runs the risk of simply bumping or completely jamming on that yellow rock in the back, making it harder to remove our rock. Now you might say, well, sure, but the non-hammer team can do that too, and that's true. But if the non-hammer team is doing that, they're playing away from the center. We're not taking any risk. We keep the center open in case we need to go back to score our one later. But we've really opened up the possibility of a really good deuce or more here, because that corner guard is way more powerful when there's a second rock behind the tee line that gives us something to jam on, draw down to, be run into if the other team tries to play onto our red, all that sort of stuff. So if someone throws a rock like that without the hammer, take advantage of it. Plan to play to that side of the ice and use that rock to your advantage. Let's look at one more hammer one when we're trying to score. Let's say we have this rock in play and the opponents tried to hit it or tried to throw any other shot and either flashed the hit or didn't put a rock in play. It's relatively early in the end, maybe a lead second rocks. What should we do if we're trying to score a couple points here? The answer most of the time, unless you are really down a lot or maybe down 2 in the last end or down more than 2 earlier than that, is just to split the house, right? We're going to split the house, and assuming we can make our shots, we're going to have a deuce with absolutely no risk here. Our opponents can try to hit, but if they hit, we always have the option of hitting back. If they roll out, we have the option of drawing one back in there. No guarantees at the club level, of course. Both sides could miss, but it's a really good setup to get to, and they're really relying on you having a full miss or close to a full miss to not score your 2 points here. Now, is there another option? Absolutely there is. You could have thrown this guard, right, and set up for a deuce or more by guarding your rock. And that would be the answer if you were looking to score a much bigger end, right? This sets you up for 3 or more, because you might be able to draw around that guard a second time, have 2 guarded rocks, and then start thinking about splitting the house and where you're going to find your third point. So we really would probably only do this if we're looking to score a big end, because if our guard's not quite there or we're a little heavy, we give the opponents ways out of the end. Like if our guard over curls a little bit, they might be able to hit, roll back towards the center, and now we're playing away from the guard, and our chances of getting 2 are much lower. But it is definitely a good play if we need to score a big end, because we didn't have our guard in play, now we do. And that's what you need in order to score, especially more than 2. All right, let's switch focus here and think about us not having the hammer, but being interested in aggression and going for a steal if the opportunity presents itself. So we're probably behind, or again, it's probably early, right? Where a steal is at least something we'll pursue if we're not taking on too much risk. And one of the ways, again, that we can be in a situation where we don't take much risk is if our opponent makes some errors. And it starts with what if we take a conservative approach to the end, we throw to the top 4 or top button, as in this situation, and our opponents flash the hit or otherwise don't put a rock in play. So now we're here. Even if you're ahead in this situation, which is the only reason I bring something this kind of clear up, even if you're ahead, if you don't have a big lead or it's not late in the game, right away you're probably going to throw up a center guard. You've been given a golden opportunity to steal now. There's no risk. The hammer team is threatening nothing. And already at this point, the hammer team is going to have to scramble a bit to stop you from stealing and for them to find their point. Or to get back to a blank possibility, maybe. If you were way, way up, of course, the answer would be to come in, just throw another one in there and make them have to deal with more later on without adding any guards. But for the most part, in most sort of neutral or obviously if you're losing situations, anywhere where a steal is on your mind at all, you're going to throw up a guard there. Here's another common one that can come up when you are playing without the hammer. You've thrown a center guard, as you will in most of your non-hammer ends, and your opponents tried to draw around it, perfectly sensible play, but instead of drawing around it, they to the top of the house, they've come behind to the back 4 or deeper. Now you might remember this looks kind of like the situation we talked about when you have the hammer, where the non-hammer team went behind the T-line. But things are a little different when we don't have last shot. In this case, the closer the rock is to the T-line, the closer it is to the pin, the better for us and the worse for the hammer team. And here's why. In this situation where they throw this rock, I think most skips, even if they're very new, know how to take advantage of this, right? We are going to come right down there, and we will sit on it, threaten to steal right away. That rock's gonna be very hard to get rid of. If you're a little light, it's great too. Anything up here is probably arguably even better for a steal attempt, unless this is covering the pin. If this is behind the pin at all, you're probably better off coming to the top of the button. If it actually covers the pin, that's great. But in any case, anything in this range is going to set up a great end where you have an excellent chance of stealing. Almost certainly, you are making it very difficult for the hammer team to set up their own end, and you've successfully steered the play to the center. Conversely, if the hammer team throws one to the back 12, that's not that bad for them. It's not a great rock by any stretch. It's really not where they wanted to throw a rock, obviously, but it doesn't hurt them. The reason it doesn't hurt them is because we can't really use that rock to help us steal, right? Just like we talked about before. We almost have to act like that rock's not there. The only reason you'd ever chase it is if you had a huge lead, and if you did that, why would you have a center guard? Unless, of course, you also made a mistake. Instead, we can act like they completely missed, and we can come right around, throw up our top 4, top button rock, and be happy that we're on our way to trying to steal the end. What if we came to the top 4 and our opponents tried to throw a corner guard because maybe they're losing or it's very close, which would make sense because that's why we threw in, and they instead came in the house, but in a reasonably good position for the hammer, right? Like side of the house in front of the T-line. In this case, if we're winning, we really want to hit that rock right away. And even if it's a very close game, we probably want to hit that rock right away unless your team absolutely hates hitting and is on the extreme end of plays aggressively, plays completely a draw game, and just almost never plays defense unless they're absolutely just running out the clock in the final end. The reason why is if we throw up a guard, we're starting to take some risks by having a rock in play because they can throw a second rock in here. They can guard the other side. They can come the other way. And as we've already talked about in some of these videos, and it comes up time and again, this is a risk management issue. We are threatening to maybe steal one, but we're also threatening to give the hammer team a big end, right? We're letting them build up rocks. We don't want to do that. So instead, if they come in when they're really trying to score and we're not that worried about stealing, like we don't need to steal, just pop that rock out of there. Sit two. The hammer team's got nowhere to go. You haven't even left a really easy double, and if they're losing, they're not going to want to throw the double. Everything's in front of the tee line. You're going to be pretty happy here. Now I'd like to talk about a couple situations where we're defending a lead late, and our opponents are desperately trying to score, and we want to run them out of rocks, defend our lead, or otherwise just we're interested in playing conservatively and making sure that we can get home with the win. In this case, we're red again, as always. Yellow has a rock on the top of the button. They're probably trying to steal. Pretend it's tie game in the last end. We have hammer. We're red. And we're out of the free guard zone period, so we have options to hit whatever we want. The non-hammer team tries to throw a guard, but overcurls a bit. And in this case, I think even most new skips will make the right call most of the time. This guard is not super great. Doesn't protect the button, doesn't protect the center line. This rock, if it ever gets guarded again, is very dangerous to us, could get the steal. So we want to hit. However, the thing to know is we do not want to hit and roll under where we set up, this the same kind of thing where there could be backing for them. Like if we do this and then they draw here, it gets a little scary again. Instead, we want to hit, roll away. Even if we roll out, it's great, but we definitely want to roll away from the guard for sure. And now we're in a pretty decent situation, right? The most dangerous rock they can throw is here, which, hey, that's pretty good, but we'd have a chance to outcount it, right? And, we'll make that draw enough of the time. That's a way better situation than if there is a rock sitting on the pin or just in front of the pin, right? Now, what's a little more interesting is the other situation where I've reversed those rocks, and this is where I think newer skips can get themselves into trouble sometimes. So, the non-hammer team has that rock on the 4-foot, side of the 4-foot. Maybe even just to make this a more clear example, we'll even go side of the 8-foot, right? And rather than guard it, they throw up this center guard. Now, I'm including this in the mistakes video, but that's not actually a mistake by the non-hammer team. Why? Because they want to guard the center line. They don't want to try to win with that rock on the 8-foot. They want to try to set up a situation where they can steal with a better rock. In this case, you want to hit the center guard and peel it rather than hitting this rock and rolling out or whatever. Because if you do that, they'll just come around again. They'll try to anyway. And if they ever make that, you are in some trouble, in some danger of giving up a steal. So, yeah, just be aware of that. Those are two different situations. Overthrowing or undercurling this guard on there, that's a mistake. Putting a guard on the center line when this rock is out here, that is not a mistake. You might also come into the situation if they try to draw around but leave it open. That happens, and this is wide open, like it's not really close to the center line at all. The tee line at all, I should say. No, center line, yeah, center line at all. Just peel the guard. Just peel the guard, live with this rock. Don't give them a guard that could get them underneath the pin, underneath the guard, right near the pin on their next shot. Here's another error that comes up, and this can happen whether or not you have the hammer. The other team is trying to score some points, right? They're down late. Or even just in a regular end, they've got the advantage, and now they're looking to score some points. And you're looking to play defense to try to make this get out of trouble with as little damage as possible. You'll sometimes hear a skip say, well, let's throw a counting guard on that rock. And by that, they mean let's throw one in the house, and we'll throw it in front of the other rock so that we're trying to get the best of both worlds here, right? We're trying to guard our rock, but also have a potential counter in the rings. There's an obvious solution here. If anyone does that, you should be thankful, because now you should try to throw the double. Even if your team doesn't make them that often, they've given you a very makeable shot, right? Because they're maybe, in this case, they're maybe like 3 to 4 feet apart. And sometimes people throw these and they end up even closer. Try to get them both out of there. Oops. Try to get them both out of there. If you do that, the end is taken care of. And if you hit one, you're okay with that. And you've probably left something in the rings where if the end turns around, maybe you can use it. What should they be doing in this case? If they have the hammer, they're better off splitting the house. If they really want to throw a guard, it should be a guard and not worry about it counting. And if they're the non-hammer team, they should go to the center, right? We've talked about all these situations before, but I think this idea of the counting guard is, in most cases, almost never want to talk in absolutes in curling, but in most cases, the counting guard is a mistake because it really doesn't work well as a guard, and it's unlikely that rock is going to count. And the most likely thing you've done is just set up a double that the other team can make a lot of the time, or at least a reasonable percentage of the time. You certainly haven't made the situation any better than it would be than going here with the hammer or going here with without the hammer. A couple more final end considerations. Early in the end, we're going to look at an empty sheet here. Early in the end, the opposing team, you have the lead, and the opposing team throws anything on the rings, you're going to hit it every time. It doesn't matter which team it is or where the rock is. It can be here, 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 right here, anywhere for either team. You have the lead. The other team throws one in the house. That rock goes away. There's just no reason to leave anything around. If it's in the back of the house, especially, you want to roll out. Even in the top of the house, you want to roll to either out or somewhere that's relatively advantageous for you. Like if you don't have the hammer and they throw one here, you roll this way, because if you end up there, that's great. If you roll out, it's fine. If you have the hammer, you roll this way, because that's okay for you, and out is even better, because if you're winning with the hammer, you're really not even thinking about scoring. If you're winning without the hammer, you may threaten to steal just to make it harder for the hammer team to score. What if the other team simply doesn't make a shot early in the end? Most of the time, that means we're going to throw through. There are exceptions. If we don't have the hammer and we're only up 1 or 2, maybe even 3, and that's a situation we can talk about more in another video, we'll throw to the top of the house, especially if we're only up like 1 or 2, probably throwing a second one in, being happy there's nothing in play for the hammer team to use, but not just throwing through and conceding to give them an easy end. We want to make them work for it. So we'll throw another one through, or throw another one on the top 4, of course. What about if it's we don't have the hammer, or sorry, we have the hammer. The non-hammer team needs to steal 1 or more, and they throw through. They throw through, and they need 1 or more to tie the game. Throw through, throw back. Even if you're only up 1, I know that's a weird thing to say, and some people might look at you funny, but where would you want a rock if you're up 1 with the hammer? The only place you could maybe justify a rock is somewhere out here, where you could say, well, I want a rock in case I have to hit and roll at the end, so I count 1. That makes sense if the game is tied, and then I would throw that rock, because you need to score to win. But if you are up 1 and they throw through, this rock means nothing to them. It doesn't put any pressure on the other team. It doesn't help you in any way. You never know. It might give them a hit and roll on their last rock. If that's all that's there, they can try to corner freeze and at least make you have to make a shot to win. Now, you don't need that rock at all. If the house is clear, you have the hammer. The sheet is clear, I should say, and you have the hammer. Just throw through with your lead. Make them prove that they have any opportunity to score. You don't have to help them in that case. All right, so that has been a review of a lot of different kinds of mistakes you might see in curling in some really simplified scenarios, all of which, though, can kind of be applied when there are more rocks in play, when things get more complicated. If you remember the simple concepts we talked about, rocks that are relevant versus rocks that aren't, the ability to push the pace, sort of, to take risks, to be aggressive, I should say, when there are really no risks involved because the opponent has missed their shots, and so on. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I love to see new subscribers, especially in the curling season. We get a lot of new people watching these videos. Subscribe and you'll see new content all season long, both strategic and news-based. If you really love the channel, check out the Patreon. I'll have a link in the description below. The Patreon allows you to get your name in the credits of videos, to see videos earlier, to get some exclusive content every month where I do some end reviews, usually of tour level and highly competitive nationals, worlds type games. And there are a few other benefits as well. It's a great little community we're building, and you're really helping make this channel grow and keep it growing in the future. I hope you learned something helpful today, and until next time, good curling, everyone.